You have a buyer who's finally ready to put in an offer. Now it's time to start the paperwork. We're going to go through the representation paperwork first. Those that you should have covered in your pre-licensing as well as in your day-to-day life, but verifying that all these are all filled out completely. Starting with the most obvious document, the exclusive buyer broker agency disclosure. Please make sure that the following are filled out properly. Rule number 1 with any form, do not leave blanks. Blanks are considered an ambiguity in the document. For your protection, do not leave blanks. If a line does not apply, then mark does not apply or add does not apply. But let's start at the top with the blanks. Please make sure that the full company name is there. Prime Real Estate Experts, LLC. If you are part of either of the branches, if you are part of the founders branch, then you would be adding founders in parentheses. If you are part of the referral branch, then you will be putting that subheading as well. Make sure you have all buyer names spelled correctly, the way that they will be appearing on the contract, on the REPSI, and on title. Make sure your name is filled in and spelled correctly on buyer's agent. And the most common error is now made on this line. Please remember that these dates are the dates that the contract expires. Please fill them in properly in the ordinal number style. 31st day of July 2023. Make sure that you mark the county that they're looking in. If your buyer has not determined what county they want to purchase in, you may simply put in any county of Utah, rather than list out county after county after county name. It can take up a lot of room to put Salt Lake, Utah, Tooele, Weber, all of those in there. So if they are looking in multiple counties, mark it for any county. If your buyer is requesting that this be for a specific only, make sure you have the complete address. Brokerage fee. Our standard brokerage fee is 3%. The amounts you put in there, if it varies from that, should be approved in advance or should be negotiated properly. If you are working with our transaction coordinator and are paying for that and want to have that added to the commission amount, then make sure you put in the proper amount for how much you are paying your transaction coordinator per transaction. Your protection period, make sure that there is an answer here that is a negotiable period, how long you want to be protected following the completion of this contract. Make it a reasonable number. I had an agent at 1 year put in 24 months. It's going to be nearly impossible to track the shopping behavior of a buyer for 24 months once they've left our office. Make sure all pages are properly initialed. Attachments. Make sure it is marked if there are or are not attachments. The most common attachment to a buyer broker agency agreement is if the potential buyer has already entered into some kind of purchase relationship with another property, and that's being excluded from this buyer agency agreement. Make sure you have full buyer signatures and dates. Make sure that your full signature and date is on there, and the final page is initialed properly. Unfortunately, because this form tends to run onto another page, please make sure all pages are properly initialed. The buyer broker agency agreement, in the section regarding additional attachments, states the buyer due diligence checklist form and wire fraud alert disclosure are incorporated into this exclusive buyer broker agency agreement. If the buyer due diligence form and the wire fraud alert disclosure are not included, this is not complete. You are not compliant. So make sure that you include the wire fraud alert disclosure with, again, full company name, your name for the agent, buyer name, properly signed by buyers, properly initialed. Buyer due diligence checklist is simply the company name, your agent name, and buyer's name must be completed. And then the buyer is initialing each page that they have received a copy of the buyer due diligence checklist. It then must be signed on the final page and initialed. Without the buyer broker agency agreement, wire fraud alert disclosure, and buyer due diligence checklist, you do not have a complete and compliant form. And you will have a file that's out of compliance. And upon review, your commission will be withheld until all of these forms are properly provided. We also require the additional forms, the affiliated business arrangement disclosure, because Real Estate Experts has a prior existing business relationship with Advantage Title and United Home Lending. We must disclose that at the beginning of the process. It is up to the client whether or not they use Advantage Title or Ultimate Home Lending. Regardless of their choice of use, this must be signed so that they understand that we are not receiving any additional kind of incentive to use those services. Finally, we require that you have the lender authorization form. This allows you as the agent, if you are managing your own file, or the transaction coordinator, to receive a copy of the appraisal from the lender to be included in the file. Those are your basic forms to make sure that you have a representation. All of these must be completed and turned in a timely manner for your buyer representation.